of 250,000 migrant children unaccompanied crossing the border in the last 2 years, and tens of thousands of them being sold into slavery. Let's not mince words. They've been sold into slavery.
I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjakovic. And we are unapologetically outspoken.
Hey everyone, welcome to Weird Wednesday. So today we're going to talk about a topic that I hate talking about, but I'm also very passionate about because it's crazy that more people are not focusing on it. And that is around this pedophilia network that is happening right under our noses, and not a lot of people in the media are talking about it. So Tara, remember in our last border episode when we were talking about how the government is admitting to 85,000 migrant children missing?
Yep.
And remember during COVID, how there was that whole Pizzagate scandal conspiracy that basically was saying that there's this vast pedophilia network, involving cops, politicians, Hollywood, everyone you could think of. And they used code words and emojis like pizza. And of course, it was just turned into this, oh, it's just a crazy conspiracy theory. These people are nuts, which I thought at the time, I didn't know any better. Well, the Wall Street Journal recently published a piece on this vast pedophilia network and multiple networks that are actually connecting via Instagram. So I'm going to read you some of this article to get your thoughts. So it says that Instagram helps connect and promote a vast network of accounts openly devoted to the commission and purchase of underage sex content, according to investigations by the Wall Street Journal and researchers at Stanford University and the University of Massachusetts Amherst. So pedophilias have long used the internet, but unlike the forums and file transfer services that cater to people who have interest in illicit content, Instagram doesn't merely host these activities, its algorithms promote them. Instagram connects pedophiles and guides them to content sellers via recommendation systems that excel at linking those who share niche interests, the journal and the academic researchers found. And then Alex Stamos, who's the head of Stanford Internet Observatory, said, quote, that a team of 3 academics with limited access could find such a huge network should set off alarms at Meta, end quote. And Brian Levine, who's the director of UMass Rescue Lab, said, quote, Instagram is an on-ramp to places on the internet where there's more explicit child sexual abuse, end quote. Tara, what the fuck?
Yeah. Stephanie, I also recently read about how pedophiles and sex traffickers are using Snapchat too, because since the messages disappear within 24 hours, it makes it harder to track their activity. So what they're doing, I guess, is making contact on places like Instagram or through, game chats when kids are playing, games where they can chat with people, and then guiding them over to Snapchat to start these conversations. And then they get these kids and you can't track anything because Snapchat disappears.
As a parent, that is terrifying.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrifying. I can't keep up with all of it. It's just crazy. And let's just connect some dots here. Okay. We have 85,000 children missing, and that's just the number that we know of. Just imagine what we don't know. We know that the FBI and various government agencies work directly with social media companies behind the scenes. We found that out during the Twitter files. And now we have a government with a policy of open borders that does nothing about children being exploited. So Tara, call me crazy, but I think it's all connected. I think it's all part of this vast network. And if these social media companies and our FBI could find conservatives with 200 followers posting Hillary Clinton memes and go after them, then why the hell would they not be able to find all these pedophiles and child pornography sites? Maybe it's because they're part of the network. I mean, come on, we've got to consider that. And that's how 85,000 children can just disappear, because none of the authorities will actively investigate it.
Well, of course, the government is complicit, Stephanie. Like we've already seen and heard plenty of evidence of the Biden administration's involvement in migrant child trafficking. And just for those of you who haven't listened to our border episodes with Tim Enlow and Dean Fitz, you need to go back and check those out because they lay this shit out in detail. And they are both former federal agents who worked at the border and have seen this stuff firsthand. And you know, Stephanie, how like the DHS is so proud right now of the fact that illegal border crossings have dropped since the expulsion of Title 42. But you know, that pesky little problem of the missing migrant children is still one that several people in Congress are not letting fall by the wayside. And one of those people is Senator John Cornyn from Texas. And I recently read an article in a news outlet called Odyssey, and it was talking about the Senate Judiciary Committee meeting last week. And so during the meeting, he said, quote, President Biden does not care about the fate of 300,000 plus unaccompanied children who have been placed with sponsors in the US since he became president. And he also talked about how the Biden admin is basically failing to stop cartels from profiting from human trafficking. And he said, you know, they know that as long as they can continue to move people across the border between US and Mexico, that the Biden administration doesn't care and they're not going to take any steps to stop it. And like nobody in the Biden administration is taking responsibility for anything that's happening with these kids. And the lack of accountability is insane. And so I want to play this clip from my boyfriend, Senator Josh Hawley, which occurred during this recent Senate Judiciary Committee meeting last week, because he like lays this shit out perfectly.
And I tell you what I'm tired of. I've had Secretary Mayorkas sit in front of me in a different committee, the Homeland Security Committee, where I asked him at length about the outrage of 250,000 migrant children unaccompanied crossing the border in the last 2 years and tens of thousands of them being sold into slavery. Let's not mince words. They've been sold into slavery. When kids are being put into factories, forced to work overnight, forced to work in terrible conditions, they're not getting paid, they're not going to school, sometimes they're not getting fed. That's slavery. And what I heard from Secretary Mayorkas, don't take my word for it, you go look at the record, read the transcript. What he told me was, oh, it's not my problem. We don't have anything to do with it. Not my problem. Now we have a new report from HHS where they say it's not their problem. Amazing how this works. Nobody's responsible. These kids are literally being sold as slaves in the United States of America in the year 2023, and nobody's responsible. They don't want to come and testify to this committee. You bet they don't. They don't want to be put under oath. They don't want to answer any questions. They don't want cameras here. They don't want to take any responsibility. Well, I tell you, it's somebody's fault. It's not the kid's fault.
Okay, so that's like laying it out right there. Nobody is fucking taking responsibility. And I also recently read this article in the Daily Caller, and it talked about a House Homeland Security Committee hearing that was held this past Wednesday. And during the meeting, the former border chief, Rodney Scott, who worked under both Trump and Biden, he said that, you know, more children are being exploited than ever under the Biden administration. And he talked about how these kids are basically being taken back and forth across the border. He's calling them, he said they're being reused, and they're basically being used to create fake family units so that these migrants have an easier chance of making it into the country. And he also said that the Biden administration is ending their DNA testing of migrants, which has historically been a key tool in determining whether or not children are being used by smugglers and traffickers. And he said, you know, that this administration knows that they're putting children at risk every day. They're enticing them to come into the country. And he said it, quote, defies common sense. And this sentiment was echoed by Senator Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee a few days ago. She stated there are as many as 30% of children DNA tested at the southern border and it being unrelated to the accompanying illegal migrants that are posing as their family members, and that the Biden administration's recent decision to stop doing DNA familial testing is a grave misstep that not only puts the safety of Americans at risk, but also increases the number of migrant children being trafficked. So she recently introduced the End Child Trafficking Now Act, which would require this DNA testing to determine whether these, quote, families are blood related. So again, Stephanie, the question that immediately comes to mind is, why would the Biden administration be getting rid of legislation that actually protects these kids and instead do shit to further put children at risk? And obviously, this is a rhetorical question because the answer is very clear, and the Biden administration doesn't give a fuck about these kids. And I think we talked about this briefly in one of our past episodes, but I can't remember. So I'm going to give a few details here. But back in March, there was a 142-page document that came out of the Florida Supreme Court, and it laid out in detail the disturbing reality of all of these incidents with unaccompanied migrant minors being abused and trafficked. And at the time, this was when we thought there were only 20,000 migrant children missing, not 85,000. But this report talked about, back in 2021, when the Office of Refugee Resettlement lost contact with all these kids, and it gave examples of children being placed in homes with unknown men. The DHS and the Justice Department received literally thousands of allegations of sexual abuse and cases of children being forced into prostitution, and how despite these allegations, the Office of Refugee Settlement was discouraging any checks on the addresses where the children were being sent. And then it turned out that some of these addresses that the US government was sending migrant children were strip clubs, open fields, and empty lots with stacked shipping containers. And the federal government doesn't require background checks on any of the men that these trafficked children are being sent to. And this report detailed how some of these men turned out to be with histories of child abuse. So again, don't tell me that this administration cares about the safety and welfare of migrant children or families or even citizens of this country, because the shit that is going on at the border that continues to go on despite the drop in crossings, all of this shit with these children that people are not fucking understanding. This is real shit.
Well, I think everybody understands it. My question is, why is there not more outrage about it? I mean, I know Hawley and some of these people are speaking out about it, but where's the rest of the Republicans? And then you're going to tell me there's no one in the Democrat Party that thinks this is wrong other than RFK, because no one else has spoken out about it. And you have AOC that made that big deal about children in cages, but now she's silent when kids are being sold into sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Really? Do none of them have a soul? I can't even fathom. I mean, you better believe that if it were, a conservative or Trump or whoever doing this, I would be speaking out about it. So why will no one talk about this? This is absolutely the most horrific thing happening right now. And it just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. And I'm just appalled that it's not all over the news and in every single hearing that these congressmen are doing. So in every hearing that they do have, just like you said, Tara, no one will take accountability and nothing happens. They could go ahead and put that act in place, but is that really going to make a difference? No, because the border's wide open and they're not going to slow it down or stop it at all. So this is what we're dealing with. It's not just that, Biden is old and senile. This whole administration is part of the biggest corruption scandal, in my opinion, that America has ever seen. I mean, 85,000 children missing, and we know that number is much, much higher. It's absolutely disturbing. And then I want to know too, where's the outrage on Instagram? Why is nobody boycotting that? Because I was thinking about that. I'm like, why are we even still on Instagram? They're knowingly promoting pedophilias to one another.
Right.
What the fuck?
And it's not just the 85,000 that are missing. If you go back to the idea of the 300,000+ kids who came here unaccompanied and who are, what are they doing?
Right.
We may know where they are, but what are they doing? Are they living with good families? I'm going to say that a vast majority are not. They are being forced into labor. They're being forced to do shit that kids shouldn't be doing. And that's something that everyone should be expressing outrage about as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so disgusting. And unfortunately, as long as the Biden administration is in charge, I don't see anything happening, but we're definitely going to keep reporting on it because it's absolutely sick and twisted. And maybe we need to be the ones to take the lead on boycotting Instagram because they're complicit in this. They're allowing it to happen. They're the network that is putting these people together. And obviously they know about it. If they could ban anyone who talked about COVID or anyone who is a conservative, they could ban pedophiles, and instead of doing that, they're actively promoting them. So crazy stuff happening. Not a fun topic to talk about, but an important one that everyone should be aware of and think about when you're voting, when you're going through life thinking everything's great, knowing that this open border is causing a life of misery for these children coming through. So sorry for such a awful topic, but I hope it opened your eyes to the truth that's going on that the media refuses to report on. And we'll be back here with a Freedom Friday episode. Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you get our latest episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you could, please rate and review the show. We are going to be reading every single review, and I would love it if you hopped over to Instagram at Unapologetically Outspoken and say hi. We want to see who's out there and start a conversation, plus get all of the topics that you want us to talk about next. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.